everybody, welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. Just 6 months ago, Puerto Rico was devastated by Hurricane Maria. Humongous swaths of the island without power and a government that seemed to only care enough to toss rolls of paper towels at them. Literally. Well, the major news channels swooped in for a few weeks of coverage. Eventually, they left and moved on to other issues. Thankfully, Full Frontal with Samantha Bee exists, and next week you can see the Great American Puerto Rico special. Let's take a look at a clip.
I'm here in Puerto Rico where people still need power, literally and politically. These people have endured the worst natural disaster in American history, and most Americans don't even know who they are. Yes! So let's do it. Let's make America give a damn about Puerto Rico.
We're gonna get a drink first, though, right?
Oh yeah, I already pre-ordered drinks at the hotel bar.
Joining us to talk about the special from Full Frontal with Samantha Bee, we have Allana Harkin, Ashley Nicole Black, Amy Hoggart, and Mike Rubens. Let's hear it. Did I do it? Did I do it? Good?
I love that clip because it doesn't explain why we're soaking wet. We're just soaking
That's
wet.
how we look best.
Was that like a part of the production? Like, just make them look like they came out of the hurricane. Get them, soak them wet.
Well, we came out of the water.
We swam to Puerto Rico.
It's a joke.
Arrived on a ship.
We did, and then we shot that. So we were wearing full winter gear, and it was beautiful and hot, and people were in bikinis, and we just kept going into the water and coming out again with our carry-on suitcases. But it doesn't explain it in that thing. And they're like, no, we just do things wet sometimes.
Let's talk about how this special came about. What made you, Full Frontal, want to do a whole special about Puerto Rico? Who wants to?
I think it was really all Samantha. She was just like, really cares a lot about the issue. And as you watch, I mean, with anything, as you watch it disappear and disappear and disappear from the news, and she's just like, wait a minute, I have a TV show. We can just go. And so we did. And when we were talking to people, it's so interesting because every person is just like, we're so glad you're here. Also, it's like very weird for us because we're not journalists, we're comedians, right? So as you're doing interviews with people, you're telling jokes and doing weird stuff and dancing around. And most people find that somewhat obnoxious. And in Puerto Rico, they're like, you're very dumb, but I'm so glad you're here. And I'm so glad you're gonna somehow share our story.
But not dumb enough to throw paper towels at
Yes.
them and think that you're actually doing something. What is it like to sort of straddle that line between journalist and comedian?
Oh, there's no straddling. There's no straddling. We're all on the same. No, I think we do journalistic-ish stuff. Yeah. It's difficult.
Respectful.
We are respectful. There is definitely a challenge because we want to tell stories, and they're often very serious stories, and we want to get all the facts out there and get the facts correct, but we also want to make them funny, which is this extra layer of difficulty.
Did you find that to be even more difficult with Puerto Rico, considering the circumstance?
Totally. I mean, we also went there. Well, most of the pieces that we do, we find there's always kind of like a, you know, what is an evil person in it that we can make fun of. But, you know, we're going to Puerto Rico, and the people of Puerto Rico are amazing, and we want to celebrate them, but we also have to make a comedy show, you know? So, but the one thing, too, about people in Puerto Rico, this was a constant joke, is that everyone is gorgeous. Like, so beautiful.
Sun does amazing things to people. Yeah.
So, you know, you're a journalist, but at the same time, you're like, okay, I know we're having a really important conversation right now about reforestation, but I just want to point out that you're like the best looking person I've ever seen in my life. And so you can know they're just looking at you going, no, you're so dry and tired and from New York.
I think it's also really hard because most of the time we're not meeting people who've lost their homes and maybe relatives. Like if you're doing a political field piece, it's not normally quite that sad. So I was filming a bit for the digital side, and I was having to learn Puerto Rican dancing, and I can't dance, I'm English. So that is really funny. Yeah, it's just not something that my body was built for. So it's funny, like I'm learning from this woman who's amazing, but she's also talking to me about her experience, and at one point she started crying. And you're sad as well, but it's not your story to cry about, plus you need to look funny. There's like so many things in your head, and you can't like move your hips while like expressing compassion, so there's like a lot. After a point, I'm just like, this is with the editors, they can like cut this how they want.
Like, I'm just gonna cry and you guys can cut this out later.
Yeah, I try not to cry, but it is sometimes really hard, just because if you cry, someone comforts you, and then you're like, I live in New York, I'm fine, like, you don't need... Yeah, you shouldn't be comforting me. Like, teach me your dance moves, but don't give me a cuddle. So it's a balance.
Allana, you said that with a lot of the pieces, you're looking for the villain or the sort of target, so that you can pull punches there, make fun of that person rather than the victim of whatever circumstance you're talking about. Who do you find, or who did you find in Puerto Rico was that villain?
The four of us. No, I shouldn't say we're looking for the evil part, because at the end of the day, we are making fun of ourselves. That's where you find the comedy. But so, yeah, definitely this time we're just annihilating ourselves in almost every piece.
Also, like the hardest thing about the issues going on in Puerto Rico is that there are so many villains. Like, the federal government is definitely not doing its job there, but also their local government isn't. And a lot of these issues go back decades. So it's like every piece, it's like you go in being like, oh, there's this problem, but it's like Russian nesting dolls of problems, and there's no one person you can point to and be like,
We can point to FEMA, though.
Yeah, FEMA.
Yeah, we took some shots at FEMA.
And then isn't there also, and I don't have the facts on this, so this is going to be a very broken question. Isn't with Puerto Rico, isn't there an issue that it was like essentially a private equity company that kind of like took over the island and essentially bankrupted the island in a lot of ways?
It's a little bit more complicated than that.
Yes.
How long do we have? Do we have like 30 or 40 minutes?
3 hours.
Yeah, so actually one of the stories that I did was going to the Puerto Rico Investment Summit, where they're trying to get rich people to move down there through these just crazy tax incentives, which has led to some weird behavior. But yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of issues, obviously, in the way that the mainland has dealt with Puerto Rico in terms of its economy. We pulled these tax incentives, which actually were kind of helping them, but then manufacturing collapsed, and then all the jobs are leaving. It feels like this downward spiral, because if there's no jobs, people leave. There's less tax revenues, more people leave. They're bankrupt. They're now being controlled by a non-elected board of people who were selected by people like Paul Ryan. People are not happy about that. But at the same time, people are like, well, something's gotta change. It's just, everything is complicated. It is nesting dolls.
So what is it like when you're interviewing someone about their survival, or essentially their power, essentially a basic utility that you need to survive on the island, but it's like you said, it's a Russian nesting dolls of problems that are sort of at the center of that.
I think one thing that we all found is that when you look at it sort of on the macro scale, it's sort of devastating and depressing. And yet when we would speak to individual Puerto Ricans, or some of these communities, right, where they were sort of taking charge and rebuilding stuff themselves, and then I think that did give us a sense of hope, of like people are really sort of stepping up and taking charge.
It was amazing, the silver lining that they constantly found. Like, we would run into people, they're like, I don't have a roof, but I have 4 dogs that I love. You know what I mean? And we all left there thinking, I need to remember this. I need to remember to stop complaining. It didn't last long. I won't swear, complaining about the weather for 24, and I'm from Canada. Like, I shouldn't, what am I complaining about? But when you think about,
it's supposed to be spring. I'm with you on that.
Right? Yeah. Come on, let's just break that down right now.
I was not excited about this, and I was also not excited that everyone was going, it's another nor'easter, and I had to be like, it's just snow. It sucks, but it's not like a big deal.
But the people of Puerto Rico, like, so many things were happening to them, and we would run into these situations, and they were still finding so many positive things about what are happening in their lives. And the one thing that I kept hearing is, the communities all came together. Everybody came together. And it was really beautiful.
Oh, really? Sorry.
One night when we were there was a power outage while we were there. I'm going to be real. I was already drunk at this point in the evening. It was quite late. The power went out, and they go like, oh, we got to rush out and interview people about the power. And I was the only correspondent around, so I went out just hammered. And we ran into these 2 guys who were also quite drunk, and I, asked them, what do you do when the power goes out? And they're like, oh, we just barbecue instead of using our stove. And this guy like pulled out his phone and showed me a picture of his barbecue, like covered in lobster and steak and whatever. And it's just like, you invite everyone in the neighborhood and you have a party and you barbecue instead of using the stove, and you bust out the wine or whatever. And like, they were in the city and people who, were well off and could do that. But everyone you talk to is just like, oh, the power goes out, you throw a party. You don't have this, you ask your neighbor. Like, they're just helping each other, and like, not just like surviving, but thriving. And for some people, I think they never expected the government to help in the first place. So they just knew that, like, as a community, we're going to have to come together and throw laundry parties or feed people, and that's just what they do.
I was going to say the same thing. We had a blackout and we all freaked out for like 45 minutes. I just immediately went to bed. I was like, I'm going to have a deep sleep because there's no outside light. But they have parties all the time, and they seem to just be very, like, compared to New Yorkers and Londoners, like very they just celebrate all the time in a way that we don't. Like, me and Ashley had the afternoon off, and we were just wandering around, and we just found a street party, and there's like all the generations just having a nice time because it's Sunday. And when they vote, everyone votes, and they have parties to make you vote. So it's just like a fun thing. And that culture, it feels like that's a personality trait as well. Like, if you were to generalize about everyone you met, you'd say they are really like strong, wise, like relatively happy culture, and we just whine all the time. It was really, it was really amazing. Not that's a patronizing thing to say. Like, they're also a lot of people were really angry, but they handle it in a way that
it's the way they handle it. Like, we were shooting a piece in a comedy club. Mike, I was producing Mike in something, and we had this whole narrative planned, and the power went out in the first 10 minutes of the show, which wasn't part of our script. That's not how we wanted the story. But then we looked at each other and went like, wait a minute, this is amazing. The audience starts cheering. The women, it was their closing night on the stage. They went down to the dressing room. You know, they popped some beers. Everyone was laughing. The way that they handled it, you know, and responded was amazing. And the audience was like, yeah, we'll just come next week. It's totally fine.
I've never done an interview simply by cell phone light before. We literally were all holding up our cell phones so that we could talk.
Yeah, and then we just kept thinking of ourselves, how are we going to get home? Are our flights going to get canceled? It's terrible.
Is Full Frontal at this moment? I mean, every week there's something new with Donald Trump that you can talk about and do a monologue about, because he says something, proposes something, somebody from his past pops up multiple times. Are you guys looking for stuff like the Puerto Rico special, to do something deep dives into actual subjects that are long lasting, rather than sort of weekly being like, you know, the buffoon said this buffoonish
He's
thing?
not going away.
No,
it's too long lasting. That's the problem. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. His name just really gets me all fired up.
I could just refer to him as him or not. That guy, that monster. But you know, do you guys look for stories like this that you can do a full deep dive into? Because why cover him as much every week, even though he is the president? Does it feel almost useless to cover him the way that everybody else covers him, like a regular late night show does?
Wasn't it, I think maybe it was your idea, Ashley, whereas the idea that we would try to do a show where we don't mention Trump even once?
That idea has come up at least 4 times, and we have failed every time. Yeah, I think it's like, it has to be a combination. On an issue like Puerto Rico, or we do pieces about like child marriage and stuff like that, you can actually move the needle on issues that people maybe don't know a lot about and haven't thought a lot about, so it is really important to do that. But a lot of people just turn in for their catharsis of like hearing us call the president a butthole. So you kind of have to do both. And so like calling the president a butthole is the candy, and then the broccoli is like, now we're going to talk about child marriage for 7 minutes, buckle in.
Yeah. Well, because so much of what he does feels like stopping us from being able to move the needle. Not talking about these big subjects like Puerto Rico or like child marriage, and just being like, can you believe he did or said this thing?
I think he does that on purpose, and it does distract people from what he's actually doing. But I find that Full Frontal is still researching exactly what's going on and what's changing in the country and who's being affected. So you can do really, like, the writers will do great jokes about his stupid comments, and then draw your attention to something that he might have been trying to distract your attention from. And that's why I think the show is so great, because it does both, and you can do both. And I think you need to do both.
Yeah,
he's mentioned in the Puerto Rican episode.
You gotta.
People don't love him.
Really?
Did you meet anybody who was like, I'm a fan of Trump? Like, did you meet anybody?
I met people who were really polite about him, and one person was like, "Oh, I've never met him," and I was like,
"You don't have to meet the president to have an opinion about them."
But that was the most positive thing. I don't know what to say. Yeah.
But you didn't find anybody that had a positive thing. I mean, rightfully so.
A lot of people were also like, I don't care about him. I have immediate needs. That's probably.
It was more that they wanted, America to know we're American citizens, FYI.
Did you know that?
Can you tell people? And so, and they have not been treated as such. So, but they're also, incredibly polite. It's almost like even the silver lining. They were trying to find nice things about him. I'm sure he loves his family. And we're like, I don't think so.
No, he
Ivanka,
doesn't.
he loves
one.
Ivanka.
Yeah, but in the wrong way.
Yeah. Didn't he tell Stormy that she looked like Ivanka? Sorry. What were some of the? No, I'm sorry, but that's like a true thing that he apparently said. What are some of the? What are the major subjects that you guys hit in this special that people should look for when tuning in?
I mean, we sort of talk about, obviously a little bit about the history of the island and should it be a state, should it not be a state, and did you know that it's not a state and that the people are citizens but they can't vote in the presidential election, that sort of stuff. Talk about the economy. Nature.
The power issue.
Power issue, yeah.
We spent a lot of time just talking about the people of Puerto Rico because they're such incredible people and extremely good looking. I know I mentioned that, but it is true.
We talk to them a lot, like we're always interviewing them on the streets and set up pieces. There's a lot of, I haven't actually seen a recent edit, but there's just so much listening to them, which was exciting.
And I think like Sam tackles a lot of like huge issues, and what we got to do, which was really great, is just like meet people who were doing something amazing for themselves. So like I went to this punk club where they were feeding people and doing yoga classes and giving free tattoos, and they were the only place in the neighborhood that had power, so they became this hub for every family in the neighborhood to eat and relax and survive during the hurricane. And we met like so many great people like that who were just doing for themselves. And so I feel like it would be easy to go do a special and like complain about what the government isn't doing and ignore that there are real people on the ground who are making a huge difference.
So was that one of the intentions of the special, was to showcase people that were doing positive things there as well and not just sort of present a hopeless, dire situation?
You couldn't visit Puerto Rico. It'd be weird to visit and not see that or ignore it. It was such a present, like it was just everywhere. People being really positive and trying to make a change. We did also do a scene with a lot of pina colada, and it wasn't an important one, but it was very fun. Yeah.
I spoke to these women who run this organization called Tire Salud, who they basically, when the hurricane hit and FEMA did nothing, they went in, this group of women went into the individual communities and said, who is basically the female leader of this community? Because the women in the communities, there was always one woman who was like, this person needs this person needs this, and they just hit the ground running. And basically, ask people, we need tarps, bring them from the US, and they also lead health workshops for women and have conversations that, maybe these women don't often get to have. So these women specifically were incredible. They just, that was one of those situations where I was just like, I could cry. I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry. Because they were, the stories that they were telling me about what they did made such a huge difference. I don't even know if FEMA could have pulled that off. You should still go there, FEMA. They still need stuff.
What can FEMA pull off? After Katrina and now Hurricane Maria, it seems like, what is FEMA doing? What has FEMA done?
They certainly did a better job in Florida and Texas than they did in Puerto Rico, where it's just wow. Yeah, it's bad. And we talk about that in the special.
Well, the question is why?
Yeah. Why was it such a
why not
botch?
Puerto Rico? Please watch our special.
Watch.
Please watch our special. I really want everyone to watch this. It's honestly, like, I learned so much about these people. They're incredible. I think it's a fun special, but it's also, there's such important information, and I also think it's very inspiring what these people are doing. But it's also a message, and I hand this to Sam, is that she said, I want to do a special, and this was in October, and we all looked at each other and went, oh my gosh, well, we got to start doing like it this second. She's like, no, let's do it like in March, because things will not be fixed in March. This is going to continue, and this thing that happens in the States is, there will be, a gun violence issue. Everyone will freak out, and people will forget about it. Not forget about it, but move on to the next thing. Yeah. So she really wanted to have a special that is still reflecting on the fact that these people, as much as they're incredible and doing incredible things, they're American citizens, they still need aid.
Let's get some questions from our audience. Here's a question.
Hi. I'm a huge fan of the show, by the way. I had a question actually about the Democratic politics or party-related politics here in the States as we move toward the midterms. I was wondering, because there was a midterm or a primary in Illinois recently where I think Dan Lipinski won, do you think the Democratic Party should have like a litmus test on certain fundamental issues to the party like abortion?
I change my mind on that every time there's a new race. I'm always like, yes, there has to be a hard and fast rule for certain, that's definitional for this party. And then I'll like see a candidate in a certain race and I'm like, fuck it, I think that guy's got to win because the other guy's awful, or gal.
Yeah, I feel similarly. I feel like abortion is the one because it is a human right. It would be the same thing as saying like, could the Democratic Party like fudge on slavery? Like, it's just like a basic human right to be in charge of your body. But yes, also at the same time, there are those districts where people want everything that Democrats want except for that. And this is a democracy and they should be able to have that. So it's like, it's tough.
And Connor Lamb was, what was he, pro-life personally, but pro-choice politically, which is kind of like...
I love it when men say that. I would personally never get an abortion. Right. Great, Connor. Very helpful.
But yeah, at the same time, that was representative of the people that were voting for him, and I'll take that. I mean, obviously, I'm not a woman, but that's fine. Go ahead, elect this guy as long as he's not going to change the politics around the country or within that state, and people can still have access to health care. But if they are running against a neo-Nazi, I don't know what I'd do there, which is, I think, what you're referring to.
Well, not even in the case of like running against a neo-Nazi, but even in the case with Connor Lamb, like his opponent was. Oh yeah, it's a garbage person. Yeah. Sorry if his family is watching. They're probably not, but
they're huge fans of the show.
Right. So yeah, in that situation, yeah, you want Connor Lamb.
Yeah. Next question.
Hi. So there's several other comedy shows.
No, there's not.
I was wondering, did you come across any other, or maybe news or other comedy shows in Puerto Rico that were covering maybe some of the same topics? And had you thought of going to other non-American or Caribbean islands to see if their recovery was different?
We want to go to other Caribbean islands.
I just went to a Caribbean island with for Frontal because we did a piece a few months ago called the Apology Tour, where we went and apologized to anyone that Trump insulted for 2 weeks or a week. And whose show was in Haiti at the same time I was? What was that guy, the Irish dude on TBS?
Conan
was there.
Conan.
And there was a...
Wait, is that
I'm
you
new in
acting, or is
town.
that
I'm
true?
new in town. And there was a flash of like, oh, but we're going. But then it's like, oh, cool. Loads of people are covering something that needs to be covered. And he did a great job. And I watched his piece and was like, oh, that's very good. So I just think the more we're drawing, it is our job to try and be like the best show or whatever, like do the best version that we can. But it's more important in the world that we all try and draw attention to things that otherwise Americans aren't talking about. So that was right after the shithole comment. It wasn't... Can I say that? Thank you. It wasn't.
There was no other shows there, though. It was just because everyone had moved on, except for us.
But yeah, I love
we
traveling.
hold grudges.
Like, we want the miles.
What do you think it is that makes Americans move on so quickly to the next tragedy?
There's so much shit that happens here. I'm from Canada, so I'm like constantly going, what? Now this is happening? This is unbelievable. Like every single day, there's something insane that happened. I mean, this is a massive country. So, but there's no time to dwell on anything. Like you can't. So, yeah.
To top it off, there's someone who doesn't have to be making shit happen every day, making crazy shit happen every day.
I think that's what it is. It wasn't like this during Obama's time. It just wasn't. That we did give attention to things that deserved it for longer. It is a massive, mad country, though. Like, even if we had a crazy leader elected, I mean, we've got horrible. I mean, she's not crazy. But we just wouldn't have that much to talk about in the UK. It's tiny. Just be talking about sheep again. And the size of America plus the presidency means, yeah, it's just a mad.
Constantly about Stormy, though. Like, every time I go to the bathroom at work, this is too much information, but then I come back, and the television screen by our front desk, it always has Stormy Daniels' name. Like, she's constantly... What is that? No one wants to move on from her. There's something going on there. Let's talk about it.
You just throwing that out there? You want?
Well, I mean, come on. Did you see the lie detector photo?
Yeah, it was like out of a David Cronenberg movie in the 80s. It was so weird and creepy.
Also, that was not. She's like,
it was her boobs in a vice.
Yeah.
Right? And her boobs are so big.
This weird pixelated digital photo. Like,
yeah. So I'm like, oh yeah, we're gonna move on from gun violence, but we're gonna show that picture of her boob trap for a good solid 2 weeks.
Here's why, though, because Stormy Daniels is hopeful.
Yes.
No one in America has any hope that we're ever going to do anything about gun control, but Stormy Daniels is providing hope that something could be done about Trump, and she's providing it in a curvy, cool little package.
And someone was just writing about this, that in some ways he's met his match because she's kind of just like him.
Yeah,
she's like shameless, and she's like, no, I'm going to talk about, no one's going to hurt me. You're not going to say anything that's going to embarrass me, shame me. I'm just going to keep going. And it's sort of like...
Maybe she is one of his daughters then. She looks like a banker. You heard it here first.
I agree with that. I think that she is hopeful, that everyone is putting their bets on her and is also excited to watch it in a sexy package as well.
I've never thought about it that way. This country is amazing.
We need some tits. We need to tie tits into gun regulation. You know what I mean? That it's hard to get it in there, but that's what we need to do. Sex it up. Sex control up.
Gun control brought to you by like Baywatch circa like 1997 or something.
It's a good idea. I think that is a great idea, like running along the beach specifically. But yeah, we need to make, like the NRA kind of tried to sex it up, but the regulation team, I mean, they're teenagers, so it's inappropriate now, but I don't know, that's my hot take.
Good take. One more question.
You guys just like completely erased my first question. I'm just curious now, like, how would you sex it up if you had like control of that?
I want to know that too.
Right?
Amy, take that away.
I think it's when Stormy runs for Senate, which she for sure will. And then she starts introducing all of these regulations.
We should offer to shoot her videos.
Her campaign commercials.
Her campaign commercials.
I think she probably knows some producers already.
You think so?
She has a team in place.
That's true. I saw an interview with her where she said something about being a director, and she said, because in our industry, women are allowed to direct. And I was like,
whoa,
I like this, Stormy. I like this.
Okay, I feel like I've really come full circle on Stormy in this time that we've had together.
What's
her
Stormy's
real name?
Stormy Daniels. I think it's like Stephanie Clifford, yeah. Something like that.
We should be calling her, no? We have okay, I didn't say anything.
Stephanie? She likes Stormy.
Okay.
I think she prefers Stormy, yeah. I don't think it's derogatory in any way.
It just seems like the porn star thing's like all that anyone's talking about. I say she's not wearing, she's wearing that boob harness, but so she's encouraging it. But I don't know.
Well, it's hard to forget that point.
What?
But she's a porn star.
Yeah, but then sometimes she's always referred to just as like a porn star all the time. It's like not the only point.
But I think Ashley's right. It's sort of like the nation was like, this is the sign of hope. We'll take it.
The American hope.
Yeah. What's amazing is how much her life has been changed in the last 5 months, in the sense that if you Googled her 5 months ago, it would be porn clips. And if you Google her now, it's like all these articles about her and the President of the United States.
And Ricky knows.
Shit. Shit. On that note, the Great Puerto Rico special will air Wednesday night, right? Is it Wednesday of next week?
Next Wednesday at 10 on
Next
TBS.
Wednesday at 10 on TBS. Everybody give a round of applause for the team from Full Frontal with Samantha Bate. Let's hear it.